like looking at the world itself. So this is set in a world where there are people with special powers known as bending.
Yeah.
And bending refers to bending the element to do what you want it to do, kind of thing.
Right.
And the Avatar is the main protagonist, and he can wield them all essentially. He can bend every element, and the elements are air, water, earth, and fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a heavy martial arts influence in a technology that, like the technology of the culture. So they're all like kind of associated into these different kingdoms or tribes, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll kind of get into that in a second. But and the technology ranges depending on where you live.
Right. Yeah.
So you have places like the air temples where the air nomads live, which are heavily based on like Tibetan monk culture.
Yeah. No, and they're very like, non-violent for the most part here. They do not believe in like, capital punishment per se, or like,
they're vegetarians.
They're vegetarians. Yeah. They don't believe even in, they believe that all life is sacred type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the Water Tribe, which their tribes are North and South Pole.
Yep.
And they're based heavily on like Inuit culture as well as Native American.
Yeah.
You see it in different places, like they wear the big heavy coats, the furs, like the Inuit culture does.
Yep.
They also, you see when they're kind of like in their warrior mode, you see
the face
paint and like the boomerang and the types of weapons they would use are kind of more akin to that of the Native American tribes.
Yeah, very like tribal, very
like spears, clubs,
very wood based. Forgery here, whereas like you have like Fire Nation, which is like kind of more like medieval, like with like iron and swords and stuff like that. Yeah.
So then we head to the Earth Kingdom, which is heavily represented as being they're Chinese. They're representing the Chinese culture.
Yeah.
And you see that more in season 2 because you see places like Ba Sing Se, which is literally just the Great Wall times 10.
Yeah. No, I mean Ba Sing Se is essentially like China here. It's got a big wall. It has like the Chinese streets, Chinese market, Chinese palace, and it's probably the most China inspired area in the series here, I would say.
Yeah, I would say both people group wise Chinese and geographically definitely resembles China.
Yeah.
Then we look into the Fire Nation, and this is kind of where it gets cool, I think. So from a like government standpoint, or kind of how they interact with the world, as a people group, they're more like an imperialistic Japan.
Kind of, yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, they definitely their attire is more Chinese based. I feel
totally,
like.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, from like mentality wise, yeah, definitely imperialistic Japan and whatnot for sure.
Yeah, and then geographically, their geography was based on Iceland.
Yeah.
And so just pretty cool. I mean, and so when we talk about like technology, I guess if you look at the air nomads, I mean, there's not really any technology there. Not a whole lot. They have their gliders that they fly around on because they can airbend.
Sure, but I mean, but you even see like in the one episode where they return to the Northern Air Temple, and like how
that's a big deal. Yeah,
it's like technology is kind of taking over the temple, and that's like something that Aang is like not.
He's mad about.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you have Water Tribe, who they live in igloos for the most part, or ice-made buildings. You see it different from the south to the north.
Yeah, I mean, south is kind of like the ghetto part of that.
Yeah.
That whole infrastructure, whereas the north is
it's like beautiful palaces made of ice.
Oh yeah, no, it's they got it going on up there here, and they got like all these like a lot more like traditions and culture, it seems like, than they do down south, just because south is like they're just struggling just to live down there for the most part.
Yeah, and then you have the Earth Kingdom, which they're definitely more technologically advanced than Air Nomads or Water Tribe.
Mm-hmm.
I would say they're not as cutting edge as Fire Nation. They're like Fire Nation's like a step above them always. Like like Earth Kingdom has things like their big walls, kind of the way they operate and move things. Like
they use like bending essentially to like substitute like things for technology, whereas like the Fire Nation is more or less like actually like doing more industrial stuff. They're making the tanks, they're making like the trains, the blimps, all these other improvements to like technology, or at least leaps in technology here.
Yeah, I would say the setting of this time is probably like it's during like an industrial revolution. Like their technology is changing so quick, and you see that even more so in Korra.
Yeah, I would say Korra definitely is full on industrial revolution here.
This is the beginning of it, I feel like.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it later, but there's an episode where they make a blimp, and that's not been done before, and the Fire Nation takes that, and it comes back later in the season. So
yep.
But they have tanks and stuff like that, and they're powered by their fire bending,
Yeah.
So but yeah, so let's talk about. So we talked about the cultures. Let's talk about the bending itself, the martial arts.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Which both of us are martial arts guys. Yep. I mean,
yeah, we both have a background in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just even appreciation of what it is.
Oh yeah, no,
even before that, Ninja Turtles was one of the first shows I wanted to watch, and Power Rangers. Those were my jam before I got into martial arts.
No, same here. Like at least with the Ninja Turtles, like I love Ninja Turtles, and like watching Ninja Turtles was one of the things that like kind of instilled in me like, hey, I actually do want to do martial arts.
That's why I started doing martial arts when I was 4.
Yeah.
Is because I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's so cool the amount of depth they went into to really make this authentic.
Yeah, no, because I feel like, this isn't the first time we've had like, like a modern day cartoon basically tackle like martial arts.
There's tons. Dragon Ball Z.
Well, Dragon Ball Z, obviously Ninja Turtles and
Naruto.
Power Rangers, Naruto, and also even like Samurai Jack. Tackled martial arts. Even things like Jake Long, the American.
Oh yeah,
Dragon. Yeah. But
Jackie Chan Adventures.
Jackie Chan. I still to this day cannot believe that was a show.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, it was a show. I watched it.
And it was like, you know what? I'm not gonna get into it right now just because I feel like that's gonna take up too much time.
Yeah.
But that being said, I feel like this is like probably one of the first shows I've really seen that actually dissects and like shows the respect of martial arts rather than just like saying like, okay, yeah, this is like kind of like, in Dragon Ball, like, okay, yeah, this is this move here. And you might see a little bit of like, martial arts application, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But for the most part, it's like
punching and kicking.
No, I'm going to shoot my laser beam at you.
And
here,
that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things I really appreciate about the Avatar, not just series, like the first series, but every series that has followed and will follow.
Yeah.
Is that how close attention to detail that the creators of it wanted, and so they even hired a Sifu. Can't remember his name, but he
kind of
basically showed them.
Styles,
yeah,
right?
totally. So let's go over that right now. So
Yeah.
every style has their own unique way of using their powers, their bending, none the same as the other, which makes the action really engaging.
Yeah, and I mean, even as like a martial artist, like I always kind of notice like the differences of like the different styles, because you have like the water and air, which are more fluid elements here. They they have like a lot more like flowing to their techniques and stuff, whereas like earth, obviously more rooted, strong. You're doing more like, kind of like hard style, rooted style.
Totally.
And even fire is a little bit like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So air, which is, the airbending is based off Bagua, which is also known as circle walking. And it's a very defensive type of martial art.
Right. Which, I mean, lines up with the philosophy of the air nomads here.
Yeah. And circle walking had to do with there's a lot of spinning in the martial art.
Sure.
Which you see Aang do constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly moving and trying to get to the back of your opponent.
Yeah.
And then you have water, which is based heavily on Tai Chi, which is very push-pull, flowy.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of whip. Like she uses the water whip in season 1
that's
quite a bit.
Move. Yeah.
And, that's a very, it's kind of slow, but then has a little bit of power at the end.
Yeah.
And so Tai Chi is definitely, and breathing. There's a lot of breathing in both Tai Chi and most martial arts, but just kind of breathing it in and breathing it out. And you see that when she's like doing water bending and turning to ice.
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly what I was just about to mention. Yeah.
And then we have earth bending, which, like you said, is very hard style martial arts based on Hung Gar Kung Fu. And in Hung Gar, a lot of their different forms, I guess, or styles are rooted in looking at the animals.
Yeah.
So you have very hard style, which is like tiger style.
Right. Yeah.
So very hard, low stance, powerful, and then you have Crane style, which is still like a harder style, but but more finesse, like a little, not maybe as much power, but
Sure.
kind of those movements that are in between. And so, which is pretty cool. And then we have a character later down the line who uses a completely different style. It's called like I think it's a praying mantis, southern praying mantis style, which is a kung fu, which is Toph. She uses a different style than all the other earthbenders.
Okay.
And we'll find out why on our next episode. Yeah. But so fire, based on Northern Shaolin Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Which, if you know Northern Shaolin, it's very stylized, kind of flashy, which totally makes sense for firebending.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean,
it's powerful and heavy emphasis on breathing, and you see that as well.
You do see that, yes. Yep.
So you see the firebenders kind of breathing in, and they'll like release with they're breathing with their punches, which you should in martial arts. But
yeah, exactly.
The dragon breath, all that stuff that you see.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting and really cool on how they incorporated like real life martial arts concepts to essentially like a show about people like using like superpowers to like get the job done here.
Yeah, and that's what's cool is like. Well, go ahead and you can watch a YouTube video before you want to get in the series, but
yeah, there's tons of them out there.
There's tons of them out there that highlight the different styles, and they're so different from each other. Like, they could have very easily made a show where throwing a rock at someone was the exact same movement as throwing a fireball at someone.
They could have, yeah.
But they're completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, as a firebender, you're going to punch for your
fire, yeah.
But if you're an earthbender, you're probably you're going to stomp to kick the rock up and then probably punch. Little nuances like that make a huge difference watching.
Yeah, no, for sure.